Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with the mighty Jingles. And I should warn you that I have been finding it very difficult to tear myself away from Fallout 4 in order to actually get a video up every day. I've got to get a video up. I have to stop playing Fallout 4 and do a video. If you have Fallout 4 and you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. Aside from that, it is going to be a very busy week. Right after publishing this video, I had to jump on the train and head up to London. So if you're watching this video and you're in the first 300 or so, I've probably just left the house in order to catch a train up to Victoria Station so we can go to the Portuguese embassy and get Rita a new passport. So that's today, pretty much completely written off. And by the time I get home tonight, when I really want to be putting in some more hours on Fallout 4, I'm basically going to have to knuckle down and get tomorrow's video done, which is really inconsiderate. I know, it's a tough life being a minor internet celebrity. But anyway, today's replay, I almost wish that I did a Why You Have to Be Mad series for World of Warships, because this would definitely qualify. Unfortunately, the kind of moments that you see in my Why You Have to Be Mad videos are very few and far between in a game of World of Warships, but this would definitely qualify. This is Jbudinoff, and he is in the Soviet Tier 3 destroyer, the Dertsky, which, if we're being completely fair to it, is probably one of the worst ships in World of Warships. It only has 3 guns. They're not very good. Its torpedoes are absolutely terrible. They have a 3-kilometer range. They're not particularly quick, and they don't do an awful lot of damage. It really is just not a very good ship at all. And yet, you know, it's not the ship. Well, the ship helps. Let's be completely fair here. People say, oh, it's not the ship or it's not the tank, it's the person driving or sailing it. Yeah, but having a good ship helps. And Jbudinoff definitely does not have a good ship here. However, check out this enemy Phoenix, who has just sailed into his 3-kilometer torpedo range. Now, they may only have a 3-kilometer range, and they may not be the fastest torpedoes in the water, but when they're being launched from a distance of less than 3 kilometers, that still doesn't give you an awful lot of time to get out of the way. And the Phoenix doesn't manage to get out of the way, so there's his first kill. Not bad, Tier 4 cruiser. Speaking of Tier 4s, he just spotted the enemy Tier 4 Soviet destroyer. There it is. I'll have a go at pronouncing the name. The Iziaslav? I don't know. Anyway, he's coming around, sailing straight into the face of this Kuma-class Tier 4 Japanese cruiser. Don't forget, Japanese cruisers also get torpedoes. And the guns on the Kuma aren't bad at all either. Remember that Iziaslav also has 3-kilometer range torpedoes. You saw him launching a spread of torpedoes down the narrows between the 2 islands up ahead, and they all sort of ran out of steam and sank to the bottom before they travelled very far at all. Jbudinoff here, opening up on the Iziaslav as he's taken under fire by the Kuma, and you'll note that he's only got 1 gun at the front of this ship. It's not a very good ship at all, but he has hit him and set him on fire. And this guy's managed to run aground in a destroyer in front of a Tier 4 cruiser. Oh dear. He's popped smoke, but it's only delaying the inevitable. He's stuck on the rocks, he can't move, and there are torpedoes heading towards him. And that's a kill for the Kuma. Good start, particularly because they've also spotted one of the enemy aircraft carriers. Hosho over there coming under attack from friendly torpedo bombers and suffering multiple hits, although he is manoeuvring hard, and he manages to avoid all but 3 of those airdropped torpedoes. Actually, you're going to see some really impressive defensive manoeuvring and avoidance of torpedoes in this replay, and mostly from battleships. I know, try to contain your surprise, but mostly from battleships and aircraft carriers. Well, anyway, a second enemy Phoenix steams into view, and the friendly Kuma charges straight in, guns blazing. He's already got torpedoes in the water, and he's about to launch a second salvo of torpedoes at this Phoenix. A couple of things became apparent about the Dertsky, by the way, while I was watching this replay. On a number of occasions, and you're seeing one coming right here, enemy torpedo bombers flying right overhead. Jbudinoff's anti-aircraft guns blazing away at point-blank range against numerous enemy aircraft. And you're going to see this happen over and over and over again in this replay. and he doesn't shoot a single one of them down. The anti-aircraft guns on this ship are absolutely terrible. And oh, there go the torpedoes from the Kuma, and there goes the enemy Phoenix, which means that that Hosho up there has just run out of friends. And the Hosho's a fast carrier, but it's not fast enough to get away from a Kuma and a Dirtsky, especially not on that much health. He's pretty much doomed. And somebody towards the rear is putting shots in on him as well. I think that's a friendly Wyoming. He's not getting out of here. Enemy South Carolina coming around. A little late, but coming to the assistance of the Hosho. Well, I say that the Hosho can't escape, but the Dirtsky isn't that fast either. I mean, its guns are bad, its torpedoes are terrible, its anti-aircraft guns are a joke, and it's not very fast. 33, 34 knots, maximum speed. Yeah, I know. In fact, he's actually used his engine boost consumable, and he still can't get this thing to go any faster than 33.9 knots. But anyway, he's now in range and visible to the South Carolina, so he needs to nail this Hosho quick, because the South Carolina's there it is. The South Carolina's just managed to hit him. Very, very minor damage, but he's managed to nail the Hosho, which is incredibly bad news for this South Carolina, because now he's got a destroyer and a torpedo-armed cruiser at very, very close range, and his nearest backup is miles away. Now this is a nightmare situation for anybody in a battleship. And he's not just in any battleship, he's in a South Carolina, which, let's be honest here, if there was a contest for the best battleship in World of Warships, the South Carolina wouldn't even be allowed to enter. And yet, watch the way this guy handles his battleship. Oh, torpedoes in the water from the Kuma. They are not going to hit. That Kuma is not going to land a single torpedo hit on this guy in the South Carolina, because he doesn't just sit there waiting until he sees the torpedoes in the water before he starts taking evasive action. This guy actually knows what he's doing. It's going to be a lot harder for him to avoid Jbudinoff's torpedoes because he has to fire them from such close range. They only have a 3-kilometer range. Fortunately for Jbudinoff, the secondary batteries on the South Carolina are pretty terrible. So while this is dangerous, because the South Carolina is focusing on the Kuma and the South Carolina's secondaries couldn't hit the side of a barn from the inside, he's in a relatively safe position doing this. South Carolina in a hard turn to avoid the Kuma's torpedoes, so Jbudinoff launches one set of torpedoes right down the target track, and then because the South Carolina is turning to port, he leads the second set of torpedoes and the third set of torpedoes. The first set of torpedoes aimed right down the track, miss, and the remaining 4 torpedoes, 3 of them hit. But this ship has 5 sets of torpedo launchers and he only used the first 3, so he's got another 2 in reserve, and the first 3 are reloading. And again, same deal, launches them ahead of the target track of the South Carolina because he's in a hard turn to port. First salvo misses, second salvo was given a little bit more lead, he drops another set of fish in the water, but it doesn't need it because the second salvo hits and the South Carolina goes to the bottom. Very, very well done by that South Carolina captain, I have to say. Even though he got sunk, he was in a terrible situation and he really, really made the most of it. Speaking of being in a terrible situation, a little bit too late to save the South Carolina in the Hosho, but here comes the cavalry, and the Wyoming-class battleship on the enemy team, who just scored a devastating hit on this tiny little Tier 3 destroyer, is probably the best player on the enemy team. Certainly by the number of kills scored by the end of this match, that guy is a very, very dangerous player. So Jbudinoff drops his smokescreen, full speed, keeping the smokescreen between himself and all of those angry enemy ships, and gets the heck out of here. Something which the Kuma with him really should have done. And it's easy to sit here saying, well, they should have done this, they should have done that, because I've seen what happens in the replay. So it's easy for me to sit here and judge. But the Kuma really should have gotten out of there, because now he's sailing straight into 2 enemy battleships and 1 enemy cruiser. And the remaining enemy aircraft carrier, which is another Hosho, is also sending torpedo bombers his way. And the Kuma is a good Tier 4 cruiser. I like the Kuma a lot, but that's a little bit too much for even the Kuma to handle. And so Jbudinoff is taking really big steps in the other direction and taking advantage of the fact that all of these guys are focusing on the friendly cruiser and are going to send him to the bottom to get the heck out of there and get some cheeky HE hits in on this Wyoming as he peels away to ensure he stays outside of torpedo range, so the Kuma can't take him down before he dies. Actually, it just occurred to me that I was saying earlier that, and we haven't seen it yet, by the way. I mean, there have been some amusing moments in this replay, and there's been some very skillful battleship driving on behalf of some of the players on the enemy team, but we haven't yet seen the moment in this replay that would qualify it for an episode of Why You Have to Be Mad. However, there's also a point in this video where it could have easily been included in an episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There's a Phoenix on the friendly team, and his name's Dave. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? And he's a bot. How do you know he's a bot, Jingles? Well, I don't 100% know that he's a bot, but I certainly hope he's a bot, because if he's doing what he's doing, awake, aware, and at the keyboard, then I fear for the future of humanity. What's been going on back at the friendly base, as Jbudinoff's been up at this end of the map, playing with the enemy carriers and battleships, sorry, almost said destroy. Well, I suppose technically he did play with the enemy destroyers. He managed to assist in the sinking of the Nitsia, is that aircraft carrier over there, Hot Lead Express, very, very good aircraft carrier player, I have to say, certainly if his performance in this game is anything to go by, was under threat from an enemy destroyer and has only just managed to sink him. You can see the smoke screen right there where the enemy destroyer was hiding. And he's just managed to sink him after launching multiple waves of torpedo bombers at him. And nobody gets angry about it in this match, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed and been paying attention to chat, but every time somebody gets sunk in this match, they've almost always been congratulating the enemy team on a well-played game. But nobody's going to be saying that about this guy here in the Phoenix. Look at him. He hasn't moved. He has not moved the entire game. And he's just firing his guns over and over and over and over and over at absolutely nothing. Oh my god, he's a bot. Well, I hope he's a bot, because if that's a player, yeah. And even if it is, if that is a bot program running, frankly, I'd be asking for my money back, because it's the shittiest bot program I have ever seen. So, you know, there's that. We probably shouldn't be expecting too much from Dave in the Phoenix, or at the very least he can absorb some shells from enemy ships that might be better spent shooting at somebody who's actually at the keyboard. But that's about the most we can expect from him. Well, anyway. Enemy torpedo bombers incoming, and unfortunately they don't go for Dave in the Phoenix. Instead, they're hunting Hot Lead Express in the Hosho class carrier, who is not going to be there because he's not completely stupid after being spotted by the destroyer. He's hauled ass right out of there. And instead, after failing to locate the friendly carrier, they're going to focus their attention on the Wyoming class battleship. And Hot Lead Express in the Hosho has left a detachment of fighters escorting the battleship just in case that's what happens. And while he's doing that, he's also been busy with his torpedo bombers, scoring a couple of hits on those battleships as they steam straight down the middle of the map. The torpedo bombers also spotting all of these guys, as is Jbudinoff in the Dirtski, and they're getting lit up by the friendly Wyoming at the back there. You'll notice that our friend Dave in the Phoenix is still shooting at nothing, despite the fact that a whole bunch of enemy warships have actually been spotted behind him, because, hey, what else is a bot going to do? Anyway, back to Jbudinoff in the Dirtski. With 3 enemy battleships steaming in close formation right down the centre of the map, he can't face them directly. If there was just one, don't forget his torpedoes only have a 3-kilometre range, and he's going to get spotted long before he gets close enough to fire his torpedoes. If there was just one enemy battleship steaming down the centre of the map, he could probably have a go, and stand a reasonable chance of success. But with 3 of them, there's just too much firepower, and he doesn't have enough health. So instead, he's going to try to sneak around them and get into the cap to try to force one or more of them to turn back and come and deal with him, which is going to give the friendly Wyoming and the friendly Hosho carrier a bit more breathing space. He, of course, does not have the situational awareness skill, so he doesn't know for sure whether or not he's been detected by that battleship, who is getting awfully close, and he's doing absolutely everything he can to minimise his chances of being spotted. He's sailing as close to the landmass and as far away from that guy as he can, but oh, well, there we go, the question's academic. Enemy St. Louis, last seen engaging the Kuma that died up here. He has definitely been spotted. St. Louis lands a small hit on him. He starts turning so he can get all 3 of his terrible tiny little guns pointed at this guy, and he does manage to take him out. Takes some damage doing it, but he's managed to sink the St. Louis, and even better, he's now got a solid landmass between himself and those 3 battleships, who are again coming under torpedo bomber attack. Hot Lead Express in the Hosho is focusing down that very, very dangerous enemy Wyoming, who already has 3 kills, and there's the enemy carrier. And this is where we get the why you have to be mad moment. Can you guess what's going to happen here? I'll bet you can't. I'll bet in your wildest, most fever-driven imaginations you could not guess what is going to happen between this tiny little destroyer and that carrier. Is he going to ram the carrier? I'm not saying. Is the carrier going to ram him? Yeah, just wait and see. Really, this is going to be epic. Trust your Uncle Jingles. Now remember, 3-kilometer torpedo range, so he's got to get close. And if this was a Langley, things would have probably ended up very, very differently, because the Langley's really, really slow. But it's not a Langley, it's a Hosho, and it's quite fast, and it's quite manoeuvrable. And once again, his absolutely terrible anti-aircraft guns. I mean, look at this. These guys are flying right overhead, and he never manages to shoot a single one of them down. And if you thought that was bad, wait until you see what happens when that carrier starts recovering these torpedo bombers. But anyway, torpedoes in the water. He set them on fire with high explosive. 3 sets of fish away. There they go. Again, he's adjusting. I'm actually switching to external camera here to keep track of those torpedo bombers. I'm paying more attention to the torpedo bombers than the way these torpedoes are going. But multiple sets of torpedoes in the water. Hosho turns to avoid. Almost manages to avoid every single one of them. Instead, eats just the one torpedo as Jbudinoff keeps opening up with his terrible, tiny little pop guns. And look at this. Just look at that. He could have reached up and punched those aircraft. And yet his anti-aircraft guns are so mind-bogglingly shit, he still couldn't shoot one of them down. At this kind of range, you've got to ask yourself, how the hell can he possibly miss? But you would be surprised. Oh, more aircraft coming in. His AA gunners are still drunk, and the Hosho has now managed to recover both squadrons of torpedo bombers, as Jbudinoff launches even more torpedoes at this guy at point-blank range, but he's in a hard turn to port. Those torpedoes miss. He's now outside of his torpedo firing arc, and the Hosho has managed to get a squadron of torpedo bombers away. Watch this squadron of torpedo bombers. Just watch these guys. This is it. Here it comes. They've dipped and turned, they've launched, their torpedoes are in the water, and it's at exactly this moment that the Hosho suddenly starts thinking, oh shit. Watch this. Bingo! He torpedoed himself. I have never seen that happen, ever, in any game of World of Warships that I have ever watched. And I've played a few, and I've probably watched even more. That was absolutely epic. And just to add insult to injury, the game actually credited Jbudinoff with the kill. But he did not sink the Hosho. Did not happen. The Hosho sank himself with his own torpedoes. And in about a minute, this game is going to be over. It's going to be a very, very narrow win, largely due to the actions of Jbudinoff here in the Dirtsky and Hot Lead Express. And unbelievably, Dave is still alive. I mean, there is no justice in the world, is there? But you'll see it quite clearly on the battle results screen. That was a suicide by the enemy aircraft carrier. And if there was absolutely any doubt whatsoever remaining, there is the score screen. And there's Thunderchild in the Hosho with -1 kills. Poor guy. It's bad enough that it happened, but now it's up on YouTube for everybody to have a laugh at. I mean, he didn't do it on purpose, obviously. It was just a derp moment of colossal proportions, and he was going to die anyway. Jbudinoff's torpedoes hit him a fraction of a second after his own torpedoes did, but what a way to go. And there, of course, is our friend Dave in the Phoenix, right at the bottom of the team list, who, because there is no justice in the world, actually survived the match and shot down 2 aircraft who overflew him on the way to fire their torpedoes at something slightly more deserving of their attention. And he finishes the game with 69 experience, which is about 69 more than he deserves. And just for the sake of completion, there's Jbudinoff's complete detailed battle results. Look at that, 10 torpedo hits. 10 torpedo hits in just about anything else would have been 50, 60, 70, 100,000 damage, but in this thing, barely 39,000. This ship is so bad. But as I said earlier, it's not always the ship, it's who's sailing it. But, you know, having a good ship does help. But I've seen people get Top Guns. Hell, I've seen people get Radley Walters medals in M3 Lees in World of Tanks. And if you can do that in an M3 Lee, anything's possible. Even in a destroyer as bad as this. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. I'm off to London to see a man about a passport, and then I fully expect to be putting several hours into Fallout 4 when I get back. And at some point, we'll have to tear myself away to get a video ready for you guys tomorrow. Anybody who's got Fallout 4 understands my pain. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, folks, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.